What's up, fam? Hope everybody's doing fantastic out there. Today we are taking a look at a couple of absolute bangers from CJRB. These are budget, these are workhorse knives, and I mean just really no nonsense knives. So we're first going to be taking a look at the Lyrid and then the Sasaya. So let's go ahead and just get these boxes off screen. Find a nice place to set those. Bring the knives on, and we will talk about them a little bit. So yeah, we have the Lyrid here and then the Sasaya. So the Lyrid is a Warncliffe sheep's footy blade and with a crossbar lock, and then we have the Sasaya, which is a traditional shilling cutter, and it is a traditional plunge lock. Now, neither one of these are my favorite locking type. They could have very easily made this one a bolster lock, but they kept with the plunge lock. Again, I don't hate either one, just not my favorite locking mechanisms. That being said, CJRB does a great job with both, quite honestly. Like I said, we're going to go ahead and start out with the Lyrid here. So this is a kind of a no-nonsense, just not breaking any molds kind of knife that really performs quite well. Again, it does pretty much everything well. It's got a great blade shape for utility work. It's got good traction on the G10. Very comfortable handles. We're looking at a 3.15 inch blade. It is 2.7 mil thick, so a really nice, thin, slicey, full height flat grind on this. 4.25 inches on your handle, which gives you a 7.4 inch overall, and just 3.14 ounces, so a really nice weight there. It's got that 1-to-1 ratio that we really love to see. The knife runs at $50, so it's $49.99. They either come in the green, like you see here. There's also a black G10, and then that CJRB bluish gray G10 that they've been doing a lot of here lately. AR RPM 9 steel. On both of these, they both run at 59 to 61 on that steel. Now, I do have a discount code for CJRB's website, so I'm going to have that flash across the screen here. You can use that to get 5% off either of these knives. So you knock a couple of dollars off, help save yourself some money and help out the channel as well. I really appreciate it. If you guys do decide to purchase one, that you use that link down below, and make sure to use that code. And like I said, just save yourself some money. It doesn't cost you anything. Helps out the channel. So, but yeah, like I said, it's kind of the same case on both of these knives. I do wish that either knife or both knives had a different locking mechanism. I do believe I would like them both much better. That being said, CJRB does well on their crossbar locks. This one is fine. It's got a great action to it. I mean, easily reverse flicks, a good thumb stud action. Thumb stud location is great. The thumb studs are great. It's just, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the feel of a crossbar lock. But a good one is, it's passable, we'll say. Let's go ahead and jump into our close-ups on the knife, and then we will get more into some details here. So coming up, you can see we do have pretty good texturing on the G10. It's nicely rounded. It's not really chamfered in any real way. It's just nicely rounded. We do have some grooves machined into that G10 there. Do we have double-sided? Yes, so we do have a double-sided pivot, so we'll check to make sure that that is unscrews on both sides and see how that works. Make sure. I always like to double-check that with crossbar locks, just to make sure that we can access that those Omega springs without having to worry about taking the pivot out and completely disassembling the knife. One thing we're going to look at here real nice and close is we're going to see how much travel we get on that crossbar when we're engaging. So it does have a pretty decent range of movement there, so it does give you a good bit of detent. CJRB uses a really strong Omega spring, so that's what really helps them with their the action and the detent on their crossbar locks. We'll go ahead and move on down. We do have lefty and lanyard glove there. It looks like we were looking at T8 hardware all the way around. Open pillar construction. Standard CJRB folded steel pocket clip. It's going to work well. It's nothing to write home about. We do have flat screws in there as per usual. The crossbars themselves do stick out pretty good. Easy enough to access with a single thumb. You can also just do the pinch as well, but it is enough out there to really actuate with one finger. No issues there at all. Like I said, thumb studs are in a great position. They're nice and tall, well domed. I mean, honestly, they just work well. It's just a standard thumb stud, but it works quite well. Let's go ahead and take a look at our centering real quick. We didn't look at that. We'll also be able to take a look at that tip. This will probably be the only way we can see the tip on this sheep's foot. Looks like the tip might be slightly off there. Looks like we might have a slight off grind, but the blade itself is perfectly centered. Speaking of the blade, again, we have that really nice sheep's footy blade. Stonewash, standard CJRB branding. There we see the designer's logo and that AR RPM 9. Plunge grind is actually pretty good, but there's no sharpening choil, so the plunge does end right there at the edge. So you're going to get a smile pretty much instantly when you do sharpen this knife. That being said, it's a working knife, so it's not really something to be too concerned about. And there we can see the off grind on the tip. So you can see right here where the grind just kind of meanders down and it doesn't really go all the way across the tip. And then we flip over and look on this side, and you can see how much higher that grind is there. So definitely an off grind there on the tip. The rest of the sharpening looks good though. Don't really have any complaints there. It's nice and sharp. Yeah, it's passed all the standard tests I use. I don't, you know, these are pass around knives, so I don't use a ton of work on them. But you know, typical stuff, opening some packages, going through some paper and things like that, they pass with flying colors, so no real issues there at all. Yeah, it really, like I said, a really nice knife. Not one that I have many complaints about. Like I said, if I'm being, you know, picky, I don't like, you know, the lock style, but you know, that's part of the design. I can't fault a designer's choice on lock. It's just it's whatever they want to use or whatever the company wants to make the designer use. So as long as it's done well, in this case it is a very well done crossbar lock, I'm okay with it. Now, for the use of the knife, like I said, these are Workhorse knives, both in blade shape, handle shape, you know, just overall design. These things are made to put in some serious work, and this knife fits that bill. The only thing I think would make it more, you know, work oriented is having some jimping on it. Honestly, I don't miss it, but I do know that there are some folks that really rely on that jimping and really want to have that. But for me, a really nice grippy G10, I don't really care for it. It doesn't matter to me. As I've said many times, I'd rather have no jimping than bad jimping. So it's yeah, it works. It fits in the hand really well. You don't feel the pocket clip. You know, if you have really big hands, of course, it's probably not going to be the right size for you. You may want to look for a slightly larger knife. You know, this one is 7.4, which is right in that sweet spot for me. You know, that 4-inch, 4¼ inch handle really fits my hand extremely well. And you do have a kind of a little bit of a choke up spot here, so you can choke up and get into that little dead zone there at the blade. And you do have to be careful because you are right up on the edge there, but as long as you're pulling back, I don't think you're really going to be in too much trouble. Then again, you know, the standard grip on this thing, you're still close enough to the edge. I don't think you're going to have any issues. There is some belly on that sheep's foot, so you do have the ability for the slicing. Like I said, a fairly thin blade stock at 2.7 mil, so full height flat grind. This thing is going to be again, it's going to be a workhorse. So no issues at all on this knife. Like I said, for 50 bucks, sub $50 with the discount code, can't really go wrong on that. Let's go ahead and bring in the Sasaya. So like I said, this is a shilling cutter. Now I saw a lot of, you know, you see a lot of flack on these things on the shilling cutters. You know, everybody and their brother says, oh, that's a clone of this, or that looks like that, or they copied this. I am so sick of hearing that shit. It's a shilling cutter, y'all. There's only one real way to make a shilling cutter. You have to have this general shape for it to be a shilling cutter blade. It's the blade. It's just like, you know, if you have a Barlow, there's really only one real way to make a Barlow. It's a style of knife. So just keep that in mind, guys. I mean, just the only way I can say it, just don't be stupid. I mean, really, just stop. Just stop being stupid. Anyway, so on this knife, it is a larger knife. We're looking at a 3.5-inch blade. However, the blade stock is actually thinner. We're only looking at 2.5 mil here. So again, this is going to be a very super slicey blade, especially with that full height flat grind there. 4.72 inches on the handle, so a larger handle here, and then a total blade length, or total knife length, is 8.23 inches. So again, a fairly large knife. So if you have larger hands, this one is certainly going to fill you or fill your needs pretty well. You know, not going to really have to worry about crowding up or anything like that. You can see with me here on the blade, I've still got a ton of room here. I can choke back and do more of a kind of a chopping motion if I needed to. Weight, it is 4.13 ounces, so just a little bit past that 1-to-1 ratio. Not too terrible, though. It is a steel bolster lock with steel liners. This one is the G10 version. There is a that bluish gray G10 option as well, and then there's a wood-handled option that is slightly more expensive. So these are $56 for the G10. The wood version is $60, and then they do make a titanium and S35 VN version. That's 180 bucks. Again, same thing. Use my code, save some money on that. Personally, I would like to see the titanium version. I didn't get the weight on it, but I think it would be a nice difference in weight. It might take a little bit of that heft out of the handle here and kind of give it a little bit more balance. I'd say that's my only real complaint on this knife, is it does feel very handle heavy because you do have a thin blade, and it just, like I said, it just feels handle heavy. That means it's still very comfortable in the hand. It just, like I said, I just think it throws it off a little bit for me. All right, let's go ahead and jump in to our close-ups here. So again, we've got a steel bolster lock with a standard plunge lock here, or excuse me, a steel bolster with a standard plunge lock here. Black G10, your standard G10, nothing to write home about. Steel liners, a little bit of shadow boxing here, so you can see those liners stand a little bit proud of that G10. Do have a reversible pocket clip, again, with a lanyard hole. Again, open pillar construction, standard CJRB pocket clip. This one's a little bit different, but it's, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a folded steel pocket clip. This one is slightly weaker, so it's a little bit thinner. I think right here, that thinning out of it makes it, you know, makes it a little bit of less retention there. But again, I haven't had any issues with it. It goes in and out of the pocket just fine. Same thing, I believe we have T8 hardware all the way around. Really nicely done there. Take a look at our centering and our tip. Centering is spot on. Let's see if I can see the tip. I don't know if it's going to let me focus on that tip. There we go. Tip actually looks pretty doggone good. I don't think that one's got an off grind on it at all. All right. And then standard shilling cutter blade. Standard stonewash from CJRB. All the standard things we know and love from CJRB. Flip it over here. Then we have, again, the AR RPM 9. The plunge grind on this one is much, much better, and we do have, or it's actually pretty much the same plunge grind, it's just we have more room for sharpening there. So we do have plenty of room there, and I think we'll be able to get a couple of sharpenings out of that before you start really showing any kind of smile. Because that plunge grind does, it looks like it would end and terminate right here, but if you see how that light's reflecting, it actually slowly crosses down to about right there. So you, like I said, you'll be able to get a few sharpenings out of that before you really start seeing anything. And that plunge grind runs all the way up through your blade hole, all the way up to here. So again, really nice job on that plunge grind on both knives. It's just the one doesn't have much of a sharpening choil. Sharpening looks to be okay here. We do have a little bit of an off grind here at the tip, but I don't think that it's too awful bad to actually show in the tip itself. There we can see that tip a little bit better. So it is a pretty straight tip. I don't really have any issues with that tip grind at all. Yeah, like I said, I do like this knife. It's not my favorite shilling cutter. You guys know that honor goes to the Vosteed Nightshade as being, you know, to me, the best shilling cutter that I've handled. But this one is pretty good. Like I said, I think it would be much better if it was a bolster lock like the Nightshade is. I don't know if they just did that to stay away from, you know, even more of the accusations of being a copy or what. But I mean, you kind of it looks like they were really ready to do another style of lock here, because you do have these points here on the knife where it looks like you were going to be, you know, making room or cutouts for a lock bar. But I don't know. I'm just it's a good button lock, but I'm not the biggest fan of standard button locks. But I mean, you know, like I said, if you're going to do one, at least do it well, and CJRB does a great job with what they do. So let's go ahead and bring both knives in here. We'll do a quick hardware check. Like I said, I believe everything is going to be T8 hardware on these, so we'll just double check that. Little bit of wiggle in that. You guys can see that there, a little bit of wiggle. Same thing on these. That one didn't really have any wiggle. Let's see, we're going to be a T6 on the pocket clip screws. Let's go ahead and check all of our T8s really quickly, and I am going to check and see. Do we have, so it unscrews on this side. Oh, y'all can't see that. So it does unscrew on that side. Let's see if it unscrews on the other side. And it does. So I love seeing that. Absolutely love seeing that companies are continuing to do that. Let me just make sure I didn't hurt that action any. Yeah, I love seeing that companies are doing their crossbar locks with that ease of access to be able to get in there and service those Omega springs without having to really worry about, you know, taking the entire knife apart, which is such a pain in the butt with a crossbar lock. Anybody that has serviced a Benchmade knows exactly what we're talking about here. But I digress. Let's go ahead and go into our size comparisons. Now, these things are vastly different in size, but should be a fairly cool thing to see the size comparisons going on here, because like I said, we are looking at, you know, pretty much 3/4 of an inch difference in your overall size between the two. But let's go ahead and bring in the Penguin here. So you can see there the Penguin lined up. We are just slightly smaller on the overall length than the Lyrid there. Definitely a smaller blade. I believe the Penguin is right at a 3-inch blade. Let's see if I can get these pivots lined up perfectly. So yeah, so the Penguin is right at a 3-inch blade. I think it's at 3 inches or 2.99, something like that. So the Lyrid is just slightly larger there, and then very slightly larger again in the blade shape, or excuse me, in the handle. And then we have the Pyrite. Again, it's going to be a very favorable comparison as far as overall length for the Lyrid, but then of course definitely smaller than the Sasaya. Same thing here for the drop bear, just slightly smaller than the Lyrid. There we go there. I think that's pretty close. Yeah. And now the first knife that's going to be more close to the size of the Sasaya.
That is the Militol. So you can see they're very close in size there and just slightly larger on the top side. Go ahead and bring in the Bel Air. Again, you guys are going to see that this size is very similar to a lot of the knives that I keep in my collection. If you guys watch all my videos, you'll hear me say this over and over again. I say this for the new folks that come in, so forgive me for repeating things all the time. If you're always watching the videos, first of all, thank you so much. And second of all, I don't know why you do it, but again, I appreciate it. Malibu, you can see here again, it's very, very similar size, and then just slightly smaller on overalls than the Sasaya. Now we're going to have some larger knives coming in. The PM2, so you can see a very similar shape and size here on the PM2 versus the Sasaya. Very, very similar in size there. And then the first one is going to be bigger than both is the MSI. So the MSI is certainly larger than the Sasaya, but not by a ton, but it is definitely a larger knife. So I'm very interested to know what you guys think about these two budget bangers from CJRB. And are these ones that you have already? Are they ones that you've been looking at getting? You know, what do you guys think about the overall shape, the design, the blade shapes, everything? You know, get some conversation going down below, and let me know what y'all think. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you. Please remember to be kind, be humble, and be EDC. Y'all take care.